Abandoned my brother's neglected son back to my parents after being manipulated into caring for him. Now I'm the scapegoat. I 26F don't want to be a single mom anymore. This child is ruining my mental health, career, and interpersonal relationships. For context, I am one of 7 siblings. I have 4 older brothers 29 to 37 and 2 younger twin siblings both 22. We all grew up in a 2-parent home together in an inner city of the US. My dad is an immigrant and my mom is African American. We were working class / low income and always lived in rough neighborhoods. Despite that, my parents worked hard and most of my siblings are doing well for themselves. My oldest brothers are married / engaged and starting families of their own. Most have stable, good paying jobs in the post office, automotive plant, etc. The twins are finishing up school next year, my brother as a welder and my sister as nurse. My older brother, a teacher, and I are the only ones to complete college. Last year I graduated from a top university with dual masters, MBA and MS in science. I graduated with honors and got an amazing job offer that started at $185K plus a signing bonus, amazing benefits and travel. The position is remote too. I moved back home about 45 minutes from my parents' house, in a vibrant small town with tons to do. I rented a gorgeous, modern 3-bedroom house. I wanted a room as an office and a guest bedroom so that my family members can stay with me. I had an amazing partner at them time and my life felt, well, perfect. Then, a kid entered the picture. I was child-free by choice and never wanted this. As I said above, all of my siblings are doing well for themselves. But there's always a black sheep. In our family, it is my older brother that's closest in age to me, 29M. Let's call him Jay. Growing up, Jay was constantly into trouble. He had poor grades, got expelled from high school, got caught up in drugs and crime and honestly, is just a shitty person. A pathological liar and thief. Last year, Jay found out he had a kid in foster care. The mother went to prison for child abuse and the kid got placed in the system as a baby. He eventually wound up with this rich white couple who wanted to adopt him. In order for the adoption to take place, my brother would have to sign away his rights. At the time, Jay was facing eviction for living in a damn trap house, had no job, and no car because he and his girlfriend, who has 2 kids, have multiple DUIs. The Fosters wanted to do an open adoption, offered visitation and wanted the kid to have a connection with his bio family. My parents were against this because they didn't want him to be raised by white people. As someone with friends who grew up in a transracial adoption, I understand that there is some trauma there. However, given the circumstances, I think any potential negatives far outweighed the alternative. My parents and my brother went to court to get custody and prove that my brother was a fit parent. They temporarily sublet a house for him, vouched for him, and essentially lied to the judge about my brother's lifestyle and ability to care for the kid. My sister and I were the only people adamantly against this, and my family literally called us all types of evil for wanting to keep a black man from his son, like BFFR. All of this was happening during my final year of grad school. Long story short, my brother won the case and got custody of his son. Yay! After less than 3 weeks, my brother dropped the kid off at my parents because he wasn't ready and needed to get his housing and job figured out. This was a couple months after I started my new job and moved into my new place. Like, mid-July 2024. Shortly after, my parents came to me and asked if I could take my nephew for the summer. I initially said no, absolutely the fuck not. Then they started to guilt trip me. Things like, my mom has a chronic health condition that makes it hard for her to run after a toddler. My dad worked long hours and sacrificed so much for us to have a better life. They also said stuff like I make so much money and have no real responsibilities. I had an easy corporate job and so much space in my house. My dad talked about how he immigrated with nothing and that we only survived because family uplifts family. When I was still hesitant, they then shifted to saying I was selfish and a bad person. This eventually got to me. I later learned in therapy that I carry a sense of survivor's guilt for essentially making it out of the hood while so many people in my family are still struggling and living paycheck to paycheck. I also felt for the kid who just had his life upended. So I agreed to keep him for the rest of the summer. The first summer was absolutely amazing. I wanted to give the kid a summer like I dreamed of as a child. The town I live in has so many summer festivals for kids. We went kayaking, to parks and zoos and museums. My ex and I took him camping, to art classes. My grad school's friends also helped and we basically showered him with love and community and experiences. I also turned my guest room into a kid's room, got a place set for the yard, FYI, so many people give these away on Facebook Marketplace for free, taught him how to garden and did fun educational activities as well. I wanted to make him feel cared about since he lost the only family he knew. If you haven't guessed yet, the summer ended and my brother never got his shit together. Weeks turned into months and I found myself a work-from-home mom. The novelty of having a kid around wore off and my friendships became strained. My ex didn't sign up to be a full-time parent and he left me. I had to turn down every opportunity to travel at my new job because of the kid and my career suffered. Also the expenses. Food, daycare, medical bills. He's not on my insurance so now I have so much fucking debt on top of student loans. I can afford this but I don't want to afford it. I'm also starting to suspect the kid has ADHD and also needs therapy. I got so fucking exhausted and depressed and started to resent my nephew. Kids can tell, and the guilt started to eat and eat and eat at me. Then fun Andy's summer camp started to turn into a cold environment. My saving grace is all of this has been my sister 22F, who started coming around to help with my nephew. She shouldn't have to do that. She should be enjoying her final years in college like I should have been enjoying my early 20s. My little brother also helped a bit, but maybe just out of pity and bullying from his twin. My older brothers, the ones with wives and fiancés and little kids of their own, haven't done shit. They have their own lives, stressful jobs, and their own families to think about. 1. Jay, the kid's father, is still on his bullshit. Drugged out, living in a house without utilities, doing God knows what with this new girlfriend. Who, mind you, has 2 kids of her own. Things that broke me further, my brother claimed his kid on his taxes. Despite not doing literally anything. When I called him to cuss him out, his response was, "You don't need the money anyways and this will help me get back on my feet." That's the last time I spoke to him. Gag is, I've always hated this brother because he was hella abusive towards me growing up. 2. My sister and I came to my parents about needing to progress things with my nephew moving out of my house. My brother is clearly unfit, and they knew this, but we were trying to be productive and think of a way for my 6 adult siblings and parents to help with care. You know, all that shit they were saying about it takes a village. My dad responds with, "Think of this as a good thing. You, my sister and I, and young women, this is perfect training for when you become moms." Mind you, my sister is 22, I'm 26, and we are both leaning towards child-free by choice. Also, 3. I met someone. Literally the most amazing, kind-hearted, gorgeous man I've ever been with. It's still very early, we've been seeing each other for 5.5-ish months and I really fucking like him. We have similar interests, and worldviews and careers/incomes. I think we're very well matched and I want to see where things go with him. He's also child-free by choice and has been very sympathetic to my situation. I have so much anxiety over him leaving like my ex did, and I'm also wary of this relationship becoming some type of escapism from my life, or worse, me idealizing him in some way. I want to be able to date without the weight of these things. 4. The final straw was that my brother's GF got custody of her kids again and he stepped up and moved him into their house. Now he's playing house with her, still in deplorable conditions, while leaving me to care for his kid? And had the nerve to brag about it. So last weekend, during Memorial Day, my parents had a family get-together. My sister brought most of my nephew things and put them in the spare bedroom. I told my nephew he'd be staying with grandma and grandma for a while, and, midway through the day, we left. I blocked my dad and brother completely and I left my mom a long text explaining everything. Unsurprisingly, I've been getting crucified. Called all kinds of names and horrible things by my male family members. Funny how they never said this to my brother when he initially dropped the kid off. My mom has been trying to plead with me, but I've been ignoring her because if anyone could get to me it would be her. I don't think I'm being an asshole towards my family. They've lied, manipulated and used me. They've derailed my life. However, I can't stop thinking about my nephew. I have so much guilt and pain about leaving him with my parents like that. After his birth mom abused him, he was ripped away from the foster parents, my brother abandoned him, my parents tossed him aside to me, and now I'm doing the same thing. There's an extra level of guilt because of the life I exposed him to when he was with me. If he goes with my father he'll have horrible living conditions. If he stay with my parents, he'll have stability but my parents will still be living in a rougher neighborhood. I just feel like he's going to have so much trauma from this and I'm adding to it. Kids are smart, he is smart. I know he could feel my bubbling resentment towards the situation and subsequently him. He can probably hear the conversations my family is having around him. I just feel like he's suffering. And I feel like an asshole, like all the things my family says about me being selfish and heartless are true. I never asked for this, I never wanted this. This wasn't supposed to be my responsibility. I shouldn't have been forced to be a single parent for nearly a year. They had an out, a family who wanted to adopt him, and yet they chose to do this to me? The only person in my family who seems to care and have my back is my sister, but she shouldn't have to carry this either. Update 1. I wanted to provide more context about my mom, since there is some nuance there. First, my parents are shitty. I'm not excusing the way they've handled this situation, their carelessness, double standards or the harm they've caused. My dad gets absolutely no grace in this, but there's more nuance to my mom that I'm trying to unravel. Growing up, my mom always took in strays as my younger sister and I would call it. Family members going through rough times, family friends who were facing the loss of housing, elderly relatives who needed care. There were so many times where my siblings and I had to give up our beds for random people my mom tried to help. She also took in actual strays, cats, dogs, a baby skunk one time, etc. All of this, however, was usually at the expense of her actual kids. Oftentimes we were forced to do the actual labor of taking care of the house guests. From babysitting to making food, etc. This mostly fell on my sister and I tbh. The main reason I think she pushed so hard for me to take my nephew was because she would have done so without hesitation if she were physically able. I think this also played into her not wanting him to be adopted, along with the prejudice. This, like I said, is not an excuse. There's still an element of her being controlling and neglecting her children. The expectation that my sister and I have to think and act the way she does, and guilt-tripping us when we don't. That there's something wrong with us for not giving our lives in complete service of others. To her, our cup should always be empty because we should constantly be pouring it out into people who have less than. My mom is not going to neglect my nephew. I think she's going to neglect herself into an early grave caring for him. And I don't think she'll forgive me for not wanting to do the same. Other update, I'm trying to get in contact with the original foster parents. I don't have their number, but I know their names and have been trying to find them on social media. I don't know his original caseworker or stuff about the court ruling, but I'm trying to find that too. I'm going to contact a lawyer before calling CPS. CPS in the US, and particularly the area I live in, is horrible, and honestly, from talking to other people in similar situations, they might not even be all that helpful if he's with my parents in a safe environment. Update 2. I never envisioned the day I'd be updating this saga from an airport lounge at 2 a.m., terminally caffeinated and sobbing over my old, battered laptop. But this is where I am. My hands are shaking, sleep deprived and overwhelmed, and yet for the first time in months, I feel like something is actually in motion. Forward, backward, sideways, who knows? A lot has happened. I'll try to chronicle the chaos in the spirit of how I've always written here. Honest, probably too long, maybe a little messy. After my last post, I dug in on finding the foster parents, knowing it might be an impossible stretch but feeling like it was the only lifeline left for my nephew. With my sister's help, we trawled endless Facebook groups, LinkedIn's, even old news articles. After what seemed like a fruitless 3 days of searching, luck finally broke. My sister found the foster mom's Instagram. She had posted a throwback of my nephew, face covered with a happy emoji, so as not to violate privacy, but I knew that little yellow raincoat anywhere. My sister messaged her, gently, then I followed up with an email, just laying out the basics, who I was, what happened to the best of my knowledge, and asking if she'd be willing to speak with me. She wrote back in less than 2 hours. I almost fainted from shock. Her response was kind but wary. She, understandably, was guarded. But she agreed to a FaceTime call. That first conversation was gut-wrenching. She and her husband had loved my nephew fiercely. She showed me photos of him on her phone, at the park, helping bake cupcakes, cuddling with their massive golden retriever. She choked up describing the day they had to say goodbye to him, how she'd left a little photo album in his bag, and how CPS had told them any future contact would be through official channels only. She wasn't surprised when I told her he wasn't with his bio dad. She told me sadly, we never believed they'd be able to do what they promised. We just hoped someone in the family would step up with love, not out of obligation or pressure. A knot untied itself in my chest. I confessed everything, the pressure, my guilt, my resentment. She wasn't shocked. Her answer, you can love someone and still know you're not the right person for them at this moment. She even offered, and this shocked me to my bones, to reach out to their old caseworker, since she knew the agency and had kept in touch with another foster family. She also confirmed something I suspected. Because of how the initial adoption fell through, the agency actually had a standing file, and there might be a path for permanent guardianship or even custody, if my brother relinquished his rights. I hadn't realized just how precarious those legal arrangements were. Meanwhile, shit blew up at home. Apparently, word got around that I was sniffing around to get the white folks to take the kid back. My older brothers, even the ones who never so much as babysat for 5 minutes, called to rip into me. There were a lot of familiar old phrases. Traitor. Sell out. You just want things to be easy for you. The guilt trips turned nuclear, and my dad didn't speak to me at all except for a single text. Family is all you have at the end. My mom, predictably, left me teary voicemails. You're hurting me, you're hurting your nephew, don't do this. Our family needs to stick together. My sister and I, now fully united, sat on my living room floor, eating chips and blasting Beyoncé. Let them be mad, she said. They're always mad. Then something unexpected happened. My little brother actually stepped up. Out of nowhere, he texted me and said, can you send me everything you have on the lawyer and caseworker stuff? It's not right how everyone's blaming you. He invited my nephew to hang out, legit, to play Fortnite and go see a Marvel movie. I cried. Partly because I was tired, partly because it was the first flicker of real village spirit I'd seen. In the background, my new relationship was moving in fits and starts. I almost sabotaged it. I kept pulling back every time things got too good, convinced I was just setting him up to run away, like everyone else had. But last week, after I got really sick and my sister was at clinicals, he brought soup, cleaned my horrifying kitchen, and then calmly sat down and asked, would it help you if I just listened, and you could talk about literally anything except family or work? That's exactly what we did. I talked about Icelandic murder mystery novels and why I still hate strawberry jam, and for 2 hours, nobody needed anything from me. I don't know if this becomes something lasting, but for the first time, I could see what my life could look like. Life, not just survival. Here's where things get wild. The foster parents, let's call them the Thompsons, got back in touch with the agency. Within days, I had a call from a caseworker, asking if I was open to a reunification or kinship negotiation. From what I understand, because my brother's custody was granted under court misrepresentation and because he's never actually fulfilled custodial duties, the agency can begin a review if there's evidence of neglect or abandonment, but only if initiated by a relative or previous placement. Since my mom has never legally been a guardian, this opened up a bureaucratic loophole. Last week, I spent a 5-hour marathon with a family lawyer. I provided every text and record, payments I'd made for him, documentation of my brother's utter absence, even the receipt from the place that I bought, the insurance bills. My lawyer believes that if my brother voluntarily surrenders parental rights, the court could consider the Thompsons to resume care, with visitation. The problem, someone, me, the agency, has to convince my brother to sign relinquishment paperwork.
A tall order, since he'd lose out on claiming his son on taxes, i.e., his only reward.
Here comes the next insane twist. My brother's new girlfriend got wind of the possible legal action. I have no doubt my other brothers blabbed, and, wait for it, showed up at my office. Yeah. In person. She was not angry, she was nervous, anxious even, and, here's the wildest part, kind of on my side. She told me that Jay, my brother, is spiraling again, that their house is barely livable, and that she's scared social services are about to get involved with her own kids again. She wants to convince Jay to sign the relinquishment. She's scared, she's done, and she said, I want all the kids to be safe, even if it means starting over somewhere else. We're meeting, with the lawyer, this weekend. I have no idea if Jay will go along, he's always been stubborn and self-defeating, but his own girlfriend threatening to bail might move the needle. My lawyer says this is the best shot. There's still lots of red tape, the agency would have to reopen the case, there'd be family interviews, etc., but it's traction. More than I've had in a year. And for how I'm doing, I am still heartbroken every time my nephew FaceTimes me from my parents' couch and asks when I'm coming to get him, or if he can have another kayak weekend. The guilt is still there. But every time I speak to the Thompsons, or hear my little brother make my nephew laugh again, or my new partner shows up with bubble tea and a big smile, it feels like I'm building the faint outline of a real future, one where I'm not a parent out of obligation but where my nephew actually gets to belong somewhere for real. That's it for now. If the next update comes from a courthouse lobby full of folding chairs, so be it. Or maybe from my own living room, after 5 uninterrupted hours of sleep, finally. Either way, I want to be the one to tell my nephew the truth when he's older, that I tried, that I loved him, but that sometimes love means fighting for people to be in the safest, happiest place for them, even if that isn't with you. Update 3. When I wrote my last update, I could not have imagined how quickly, or how absolutely, everything would explode in the space of just 2 weeks. It feels like I've been spun around in a centrifuge, people and plans thrown outwards while at the center, somehow, the world is both quieter and finally makes a little sense. I'm writing this at my own kitchen table with an entire mug of coffee I brewed just for myself, no cartoons blaring, no kitchen-destroying toddler art projects, just the hush that comes when the storm finally moves off. But I'm not sure anything will ever be the same again. The weekend the lawyer meeting was scheduled, I didn't sleep. I watched my nephew sleep on the baby monitor, still with my parents at this point, a tiny bundled kid, always clutching that battered stuffed tiger. My sister crashed on my sofa. I'm not letting that psycho girlfriend show up and jump you, she announced. We tried to rehearse in real time what we'd say if Jay freaked out, or if his girlfriend lost her nerve. By the time Saturday rolled around, I was so keyed up my new partner had to drag me out for a pre-meeting walk and remind me, just tell the truth. If this blows up, you're still worth loving. No matter what happens. The meeting was bonkers. Jay's girlfriend, let's call her Lila, was, for lack of a better term, a walking bag of nerves. Her hands shook on her vape. My lawyer set up in a bland conference room at the legal aid office, and Lila did much of the talking. She laid it out for Jay, point by point. The house was a mess, she was this close to losing her own kids again, and whatever he thought he was proving by holding on to his son was leaving everyone destroyed, especially the child. She told him that she'd already called her own parents to see if they might take her kids if it came to another CPS investigation. I sat silent, counting each tick of the clock, heart in my throat. What happened next was, honestly, kind of surreal. Jay, legendary manipulator, victim of circumstance, abuser, started crying. Not loud or showy. Just quiet, streaming tears. He didn't argue. He didn't yell. He just collapsed. I can't do it, he said. I didn't want to be like this, but I don't know how not to screw it all up. For a second, the room went cold and still, like all the air sucked out of it. Then my lawyer slid the paperwork over and, I kid you not, he signed. No theatrics, no last-minute negotiation, just his scratchy, erratic signature. He did make me promise, if he ever wants to meet me in the future, don't poison him against me. Reader, I don't like my brother, but I nodded. I'll let his own actions be his legacy. We left the conference room and I walked out into the hard sunlight of the parking lot, doubled over, not with relief so much as pure shock. Months and months of being gaslit and scapegoated, undone by a single pen stroke. The next week was bureaucratic insanity. My lawyer and the Thompsons' caseworker worked double speed to file for emergency review. My family found out immediately. My mom, in some kind of wild internalized guilt and fury flip, went back and forth between desperate pleading and stubborn denial. She insisted the family would figure it out. My older brothers called my phone so many times my voicemail crashed. My dad didn't say a word, Only sent a Facebook post pointedly sharing something about keeping family out of the courts. Meanwhile, the Thompsons, they're real, flesh and blood people now, not just distant saviors, invited my sister and me to dinner. It was weird, stepping into their world. Their house is a kind of gentle, chaotic haven, dogs everywhere, kids' art on the fridge, yakisoba for dinner because everyone was tired. My nephew played with their daughter, he remembered her. Even after a year away, and for the first time, I watched him breathe easy. I stayed up late with the Thompsons, talking into the night, about his routines, what he likes to eat, what he's scared of. We made a plan for a gradual transition, therapy for him, family therapy for us if needed. No instant handover, no more upheaval. Nothing dramatic, just deliberate, small steps. And you know what? I saw the beginning of something I did not expect, not just hope for my nephew, but for myself, too. That night, I went back home and ugly cried on my sister's lap. Not for the loss of my kid, but for his gain, a life that might just be a little lighter, a little more joyful, a little more his. On the other fronts, things are adjusting. My new relationship survived my wildest, ugliest, most stretched too thin weeks. He stuck around, even as I warned him again and again that the chaos wasn't over, that I might not be fun for a long while. We had our first actual getaway this weekend, just a day trip, a few hours up the lake, wandering a farmer's market together, no diapers or guilt or emergency phone calls. He's been patient but upfront. If you need space, I'll give it. I want you, not your obligation. It shocked me to realize I'd never, not once, been able to take someone at their word before. My parents are still a mess. My mom came over last night, not to fight, but to say goodbye to her grandson in her own way. She baked his favorite cookies, badly, but he loved them, brought over some photos from when she was young, and told him, "Grandma will always love you, even when you're not with me all the time." It broke my heart. It healed some things, too. My dad still won't speak to me, but for once, I don't feel responsible for his bitterness. And for the first time in a year, my therapist told me to take a victory lap. It doesn't feel like triumph, exactly. It feels hard-earned, and a little ragged, and stitched together with the love and sanity of friends who swooped in, siblings who stood up, strangers who answered emails, and a kid who deserves 1,000 happy endings. I'm not the hero for handing my nephew back. I'm just someone who finally, listened to her own breaking point, and found something like hope on the other side. The guilt isn't gone. But there's space now for something else, too, a future that's mine, not built from obligation or resentment, but from choice. If you're reading this in your own chaos, I hope you know, the village isn't always who you expect it to be. Sometimes it's pieced together from unlikely places and from the hardest decisions. Sometimes loving someone means letting go. Next week, the Thompsons are officially filing for guardianship. My nephew gets visits with all of us who love him, including me, whenever I'm ready. And for the first time in forever, I booked a one-way ticket, just me, just a new city, just to see what's possible. Update 4. I'm writing this sprawled out across the unfamiliar bed of a rental cottage, somewhere on the Michigan lakeshore, where the air tastes like bonfires and summer storms. It's a Thursday, I only remembered because I had a meeting, and for the first time in a year, I almost forgot to resent it. I sit here, staring at the way the light flickers in through the blinds, unsure how to begin because the last 3 weeks have completely rearranged my life and every single relationship in it. First, my nephew. The transition, it turns out, is not a single moment. It's a series of small leavings, each one nibbling at the heart, each one a test of resolve. I was there the first night he slept at the Thompsons again, this time not as a visitor, but as a part of their world. The social worker was gentle but firm. "We're building a bridge, slow and steady." He arrived clutching that tiger, fiercely quiet, only to explode in delighted shrieks seeing the dog, the old backyard treehouse, the girl from before with her wisecrack grin and a handful of matchbox cars. I watched him ease into himself, his shoulders unlocked, his weird, clever jokes returned. He even asked to water the garden like at Auntie's house. And when it was time for me to slip away, he looked up and asked, "I'll see you again, right?" I said yes. I promised, even if I had to bite my tongue against the ache. 2 days later, I kept my promise. Not as caretaker, but as visitor, and somehow, that felt right. Each time, it's gotten a bit easier. There's an actual process, schedules, phone calls, therapy support. Sometimes I bring ice cream or a silly present. Sometimes we just sit and draw. Always, he's comfortable. I think, perhaps, for the first time in months, he doesn't feel the burden of being my responsibility. He's just a kid again, tucked into a family that gets up for him in ways I never could. For what it's worth, the Thompsons have been more gracious and open than I dared hope. They send me updates, photos of mud-stomped boots and newly planted sunflowers, a grinning Polaroid from his first t-ball game, even a frantic "Do you remember if he has a peanut allergy?" text. They don't want to cut anyone out. They are clear-eyed about the road ahead, trauma, questions, years of patching him up. But they open the door to me and my sister. It really does feel like a bigger family, even if it's not by blood. Speaking of my sister, she stepped into an unexpected light. She went with me to one of his therapy check-ins, at his invitation. "Can my favorite Annie come?" She's less anxious these days, wears her hair in wild colors, and talks openly about med school applications. She told me she feels less like she's living someone else's life. I'm not sure I've ever felt more protective, or more proud, of her. Now, my parents. Phew. Let's say the family landscape is scorched earth, at least on my dad's side. The older brothers are split, 2 have gone radio silent except for passive-aggressive group chat posts, 1 actually emailed me to say he never realized how bad it got and is sorry he didn't help more. I half believe him, but what's stranger is how the absence so quickly became peace. My dad refuses to speak to me. I stopped trying. My therapist said, not every wound can be fixed. Sometimes leaving it alone lets scar tissue form so you stop bleeding. For the first time, I let the silence settle without running from it. But my mom, she's been caught in the storm's eye, torn between guilt and tradition. At first, she visited the Thompsons with me, sat on their plastic lawn chairs, watched her grandson run circles around the dog. She cried when he hugged her as tightly as he ever had. She asked me if she'd failed. I said, you tried. We all did, even if not the right way. And trying counts for something. We're not magically healed. But now, when she texts me, it's not just to guilt me, it's to ask about a new book, or to share a picture of her tending the flower garden, or to send a blurry snapshot of my nephew asleep in her lap while visiting on a Sunday. Something quieter, but also, maybe, more honest. Now, the bombshell that I never anticipated would come so soon. Jay, my brother, checked himself into rehab. Lila called me to tell me, her voice trembling in the pre-dawn. She said my brother finally hit bottom, that after signing the papers he started drinking more, spiraling, and finally, after a devastating fight with her, he looked at me and said he wanted to stop being a ghost. I have no idea if he'll stick with it. I don't know if I ever want to have a brotherly relationship with him. But the sheer improbability of it, the crazy cosmic timing, just makes me sit up and notice, maybe everyone, in their own jagged way, is trying to find their next step up from rock bottom. And as for me, this is wild. Last week, for the first time since grad school, I traveled for fun. My partner and I packed up the car and drove north, ate our way through roadside stands, kayaked out into trembling lake mornings. I slept until nearly noon one day, read a bad detective novel cover to cover, and let him see me cry when the reality of it's no longer on me finally caught up. He held my hand and said, simply, I love the you that's finally learning to breathe. And that's enough for now. It was the first time in years I believed him. I returned home after, and instead of dreading the echo of the empty bedrooms, I painted the guest room sunny yellow. I filled one wall with things that sparked joy, postcards, silly art, a photo of my nephew and me from last summer, me muddy, him triumphant, both of us real and smiling for the first time in what felt like forever. There's still a road ahead, of course. My nephew's formal guardianship hearing is set for the end of the month. The Thompsons asked if my sister and I would say a few words about him, to help stitch his story together for the caseworker. We both said yes. I'm not sure how I'll get through it without sobbing. But I will, because this is how you show up for a life that isn't defined by anyone else's shame. I've started a new project at work. Something just for me, that uses my brain and not just my battered, overused heart. My boss actually asked if I'd consider a leadership track. For the first time, I said I'd think about it, maybe even want it. I have friends coming to visit next month, and I'm planning a solo vacation in the fall. Every day I wake up and the guilt is still there, yes, but something else, too, exhilaration, maybe even pride. Maybe my life isn't just damage control, it's actually unfolding. If I get the urge to check in on my nephew, and I do, every day, I remind myself that he's where he belongs. And I'm exactly where I need to be, too. I don't know if peace ever feels the way you expect, but right now, on a rainy lakeshore, I'm closer than I've ever been.